Just getting started or feeling stuck? Wherever you're at, the VO Dojo is here to help you take your voiceover career all the way. Get the training, support, and connection you need to guide you every step of the way from I don't know to working pro. You get a rock-solid foundation and all the tools you need for your sustained, successful voiceover career. Mindset, skill set, and real-world experience, all in a hands-on, hearts-in, supportive community. Join us at thevodojo.com.
Welcome everyone to the VO Dojo's monthly free webinar called Get to Know VO. I'm Tish Hicks, the Master Sensei here in Burbank, California, and we are super excited to welcome back Sébastien Croteau, who's sort of October, has become an October tradition. Sébastien is one of the foremost experts on extreme vocals, and what we'll be talking about today, creature voices, and inherently, how does one expand one's imagination? How does one create the playground to explore these things? And then how does one take care of one's vocal instrument while doing these things that push us beyond our perhaps pushes the envelope of what we can do with our voice. Alex Quinn is here moderating for us, and Sébastien is so in popular demand that we have one good hour with him, so we're going to get going and get things started. So Sébastien, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me, Tish. It's always a pleasure to see all of you, which is now almost a tradition now, right?
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Like trick-or-treaters. Can you give us a super concentrated little highlight of who you are and what you do, and then we'll jump into talking about creature voices.
Absolutely. So the concentrated version would be I was born screaming and I never stopped. But let's make it less concentrated. Basically, I was always fascinated by, villain voices, especially when I was a kid. I was listening to cartoons, and for me, Cookie Monster, which is not basically a villain, but if you remember the voice, C is for Cookie. He had a weird voice. And Skeletor and Eamon with his infamous laugh, and Commander Cobra, hey, G.I. Joe, attack! For me, they were the most amazing voices back in the day. So, of course, I always had an interest in weird vocal technique or weird voices. And, of course, when I started to sing metal music in 1990, I'm that old. Of course, my interest for weird voices was just increased because metal music, if you listen to rock or metal or even death metal music, you can hear weird voices, people creating vocal distortion, people going into all sorts of different sound. So I started there, then I learned throat singing, so Tibetan, Tuvan throat singing, Inuit throat singing. I added that as kind of a tool to explore even more sound. And then in 2005, by pure coincidence, one of my friends started to work for Ubisoft Montreal, and I was called to actually do a recording session for Far Cry Instinct, which was on the first Xbox. And basically I thought this was just going to be a one-time thing, right? I go there, I do that, and that's over. But then they called me back to choke for 2 hours for Assassin's Creed 2. When people are poisoned with a poison blade, they asked me to record choking sound for 2 hours.
Wow, that's specialized.
Yeah, I can't believe I was paid for that, but hey, I'm not going to say no to money. And then they called me back for Prince of Persia for the reboot version. And then basically the word of mouth spread in Montreal, because in Montreal we're quite lucky to have a huge industry, video game industry. Basically at that point, people started to talk to one another because the audio community, like the video community, is a small one. So the word spread, and then I got to work with other company on other project. I started to do, for example, Shadow of the Tomb Raider. I did the voice of one of the main character, and then we did a lot of work on Guardian of the Galaxy done by IDOS Montreal, and I think it's starting there. This kind of like launched us into space for a lot of video game company, and along the way I created my own company called the Monster Factory, which is basically people, voice actors and vocal stunt performers specialize in vocal distortion, vocal effect, and we just do monster, creature, and people who are set on fire and we need to scream for a few minutes.
Yeah, vocal stunt performers. That's a really powerful, succinct image, isn't it? Like just as a normal actor would have a stunt performer, the vocal stunt performer. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that if you look at, the movie industry and you have stunt people, right? In this day and age, nobody would think of asking an untrained actor to perform a complex stunt, right? That was like, no, we can train an actor to a point, but after that, we have stunt people, stuntmen and stuntwomen who are coming on board and doing what is considered to be the most dangerous. And the reason I'm using this terminology is that, unfortunately for me in voiceover, we ask people who are not trained to perform, screaming for a prolonged period of time, a creature sound. And sometimes those people are not trained. And for me, by putting some sort of an emphasis on the word stuntman, it means that, you have to be specialized in that area specifically to reduce the risk of injuries, right? And for me, that's the equivalent. So this is why I call it. It's still voice acting, right? But for me, it's a speciality in voice acting, which is either creature voice acting or vocal stunt performance.
Right. Well, as we were waiting for people to come on, we brought up this word, vocal safety. And when you put things in that context of we are doing heightened, extreme, complicated, difficult things that specialists can or should be doing. Can you say a little bit more about that? Because I think it puts a framework about as we jump in and explore what are we talking about. But it's good to have this framework to be thinking about it.
Absolutely. Well, if you work in the voiceover industry, you probably heard about all the horror stories about voice actors and voice actresses losing their voice after an intense video game recording session. This has been going on for a long time. There's even been articles in newspaper about it. Specifically, my union in Canada, ACTRA, actually did a survey 3 years ago, and the result generated a few articles about how to perform extreme vocals maybe a little bit more safely. Of course, the industry adapted to that. I think that now, instead of having a 4-hour recording session, we have a 2-hour recording session maximum. And then if we need to do more, this is scheduled 48 or more hours afterwards. So to make sure that we're doing...
Did you guys have to go on strike to get that, or
no? The thing is, what is different for us is that I'm a metal vocalist. I have 35 years of experience as a metal vocalist. I'm trained to perform extreme sound, not only for an hour or two, but for up to 4 hours. Like that's the extent of our training. All right. And in the last 20 years that I've been doing this, or that I've been directing other actors when they're doing it, we never had to stop or reschedule a recording session because of vocal fatigue. Just let that sink in. Because you've all heard the stories in 20 years, out of the dozen and the hundreds of characters that we did in the video game, not once did we have to stop or reschedule because of vocal fatigue. So this is why, for me, and I think it's interesting that you're bringing, the word safe, because as we were discussing prior to starting this, for me, safety is kind of an illusion in the sense that, when you're wearing a seatbelt, it doesn't make you immune to accident, right? There's other people driving on the road. So the thing is, a seatbelt is going to prevent you from the worst of the injuries. And for me, preventing from the worst of the injuries can only be achieved, can be achieved by different measure, right? Taking care of our vocal health, sleeping enough, drinking enough fluid, drinking enough water, but mostly by training. Like, a lot of people don't think that you can actually train to scream, but if you look at rock, metal vocalists, like, those are people who've learned how to scream and have learned how to sustain it. Not only, for a year, like in my case, I've been doing it 35 years, and I'm working with people that have been sustaining vocal distortion for 15, 20, 25 years, right? So for me, it's more, instead of the notion of safety, it's more the notion of sustainability. And sustainability is not a straight line, right? Sometimes we're like, okay, no, I'm good. Sometimes it's like, oof, that was one rough. But overall, if we look at it like longitudinal studies, where they've been performed over the course of the years, if we look at, over the years, no people develop vocal dysphonia. So for me, it all goes back to training. And the thing is, we can only do so much by, because a lot of people have put all their eggs in the basket of warming up and cooling down, which I appreciate that. Like, for me, I warm up and cool down, but differently than what most people think, right? But the thing is, if you want to be good at something, think of extreme vocal or creature voice acting as training muscle. How do you go about training muscle, right? You don't go from starting running around the block to try and run a 5 kilometers marathon, right? So you go at it progressively. And the thing is, we're not training the parts to perform the sound. We're training the muscle that are attached to the parts that we're using to create the vocal effect, right? So it's really by training that we can actually make it sustainable. And most of what people have said about extreme vocal, and even in the vocal health specialist community, is that we have to avoid it as much as possible. And for us, that's not the way to go. Like, that's not how we train muscle. We don't become an Olympic skater by avoiding skating. We don't become a singer by avoiding singing, right? We practice specifically what we need to practice in order to, again, to develop stamina, endurance, and to make it sustainable overall. So anyway, so I could talk about that for hours.
No, it's good. So this is great because we've created sort of a framework. Sometimes when I meet people and I say I do VO, they go, what's voiceover? Like, what is that? In terms of creature voices, we hear creature voices, but where, like, can you put it in context of where in all of the realms of voiceover will we be called upon to do creature voice? Like, what have you worked on? Where do we find the need for creature voices?
Well, I think I'm going to start by explaining what is the creature voice acting market and what is the creature sound market overall. If you listen to King Kong, 1933, black and white version, if you listen to the scream of King Kong, funny enough, those are tiger screams, right? And they came from a sound library. So the thing is, since a long time, but at least since 1933, people have been using animal sound in movies and in video games to create the sound for monsters and creature. And still to this day, this is the dominant approach, right? They blend the sound of different animals, they put it together, and then they say, okay, woof, that is, a scream of pain. Okay, that is that creature, that is anger, that is... The other approach is using software to modify the voice in real time. There's a plugin called the Humanizer, which is if you listen to any villains in a Hollywood blockbuster and his voice seems a little lower, that is being transformed by something called the Humanizer. So that you can work with that to transform your voice in real time. Some people might have had this experience. So this alone, the Animal Sound Library and the plugin that modify the voice, this is probably, like both of them together, 99% of the market. So when we talk about creature voice acting and creature voices, we're talking about a niche, a very, very, very small niche. And that's the reason why I've been traveling for the last 3 years, because if most audio directors and sound designers are not aware that humans might actually be, an interesting option, well,
Mm-hmm.
people will still use what they've been using since almost 100 years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we go back to King Kong. So being able to do creature voice acting, as you can imagine, you have to have a portfolio that can actually go with it, especially in the AAA universe. Usually in indie game development, even if you're not, let's say well-trained creature voice actor, like there's still room because the recording session are going to be less longer, but also most of the time you can record from home. So actually you can pace yourself, right? But when you go to the AAA level, most of the time you have to go in a studio. The clients are there and you have to do it for at least 2 hours and at the most 4 hours for some recording session. Tomorrow I have a 4-hour recording session and Friday as well. So tomorrow as the voice talent and Friday as the voice director. Because sometimes this is what they are asking of us. So we have to be able to do that. So I think that, being able to start somewhere, because, it's like in everything, people want to start at the top, right? And sometimes they forget that the reality is that, well, you have to start somewhere. It might not be in AAA, but you have to start somewhere. And I know that because the team for indie game, the team that indie game the developers have are smaller teams, so they're probably much more easier to convince than a whole department, right? Because when you work AAA level, you have the audio director, you have the voice designer, you have the dialogue director, you have you have a lot of people that needs to be convinced of that, and for them to spend a good amount of money on you, they have to trust that you can actually deliver that. So building a portfolio, but again, how do you build a portfolio when you have none? I think that the indie game developers are actually an amazing way to start. But now where do you find them? Well, I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn looking at the list of employees of all the different companies that are there. Because LinkedIn is really interesting in the sense that, if you call a company and you say, hey, who's your audio director? They're not going to tell you. But if you go on LinkedIn and if you click on a company, you can actually look at the, people who work for that company and maybe try and find a way to connect with them, to have a chat with them about that kind of thing. But the fact that, all that being said, the fact that it's a very small and specialized niche, other than agencies like myself and others who specialize in that, like when you're in Los Angeles, you have amazing voice talents like D. Bradley Baker. They've been doing this forever. Actually, for me, D is the father of creature voice acting. You have Fred Tatasciore, Miss Silly, and amazing people that have been doing that for quite a bit of time. So sometime being able to find the agency that are already representing creature voice actor is can be interesting. But for me, the bottom line is, if you cannot sustain, what the vocal effect, because the thing is with creature voice acting, the vocal effect is intimately tied to the character. Right? Let's say I have to play an orc, right? And the orc is like the one you hear in Lord of the Ring, minus, let's say for myself, the British accent. But let's pretend I'm going to try and do it. So if I go, meat is back on the menu, boy, right? I'm doing a vocal effect. I'm using ventricular folds in order to do that. So if I cannot sustain the vocal effect, and at some point I lose the capacity to do the vocal effect, no amount of acting skill will save me. I'm going to try and rely on, maybe I'm trying to lower my voice and do this. This is not going to work. That's not the same character at all. So this is where sustainability and being able to sustain the vocal effect become the first thing that we need to achieve, being able to sustain them for the duration of a recording session. And then, of course, after that, you can learn how to act with them. But I think that, starting as an actor going into creature voice acting, because of the already immense vocal load those people already have with their job, with the commercial, with everything they need to do, usually it's a slower process than someone who just dedicate himself to vocal effect.
Well, here's a question, Sébastien. We have a succinct amount of time.
I know.
Can you give us so you just talked about this voice and a technique. Could you demonstrate
Yeah.
a few different like in the same way that if you were starting to work with a stunt performer and you left your first day of stunt performing like this is a role like how you roll safely, like what would be some things that would be so we can start hearing and then start understanding what would be like maybe four different vocal effects that
So I
would
would
start.
say if we're going from, because this is Halloween, right? So if we're going
Mhm,
from, some of the most popular monster and creature that we know about, let's
mhm,
start with the zombie, one of my favorite one, right?
mhm,
Zombie, the sound of zombie has evolved over time, right? If you go back in the day of Romero, Night of the Living Dead, they were moaning. If you play like myself Resident Evil 1 on PlayStation, Resident Evil 1 on PlayStation 1 at 3 a.m. in the morning, like those moan were quite creepy, right? And now 28 days later, of course, they're not zombies, they're infected. And the remake of what is it? Not Day of the Dead, the remake of George Romero by Zack Snyder. What is it? Help me,
mhm.
people.
Dawn of the Dead.
Dawn of the Dead. Thank you. Oh my God. Thank you. Dawn of the Dead. Now the physical dynamic of the zombie changed, right? Or the infected, it started to run. So I don't think that the moaning, would apply. And this is where the sound, like the more aggressive sound, started to happen. And also one technique that is using tissue, like you have the soft palate here, and the soft palate, when it goes down, it transforms into what we call the pharyngeal wall. So there's pharyngeal tissue, so we can use that. And this is not done by my vocal folds, by the way, because I'm not adding a pitch. You might hear a pitch, but there's none. I'm going to show you when I put a pitch, you can actually hear it. So this is no pitch, and then I'll go into a pitch. So now I put a pitch when you are da 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 da. So the thing is, the vocal effect doesn't happen on the vocal fold. So it's usually, let's say, at the beginning, that's the thing to know. Most vocal effects are not comfortable. Discomfort is part of the training process. Like the same thing, if you don't go to the gym and for the first time in your life you go to the gym, this is not going to be comfortable, right?
Right. Or
But
you build calluses on your hand if you're a guitar player or something. Right.
absolutely. So we don't have, apart maybe from 𝗨𝗶𝗺𝗃, because that's another part we can actually use. If you know the movie Enemy Mine, the science fiction movie in the 80s, Louis Gossett Jr. was using uvula to actually do this. 𝗏𝗏𝗏, 𝗏𝗏𝗏. So that is the little thing dangling that we can actually use to create vocal effect. And if you know anything about the story of the Predator and how the click of the Predator came to be, this is one of the voice actor who actually was doing 𝗨𝗶𝗺𝗃. Wait a sec. Like that. And this is a very soft with no pitch 𝗨𝗶𝗺𝗃. We can use that to do cute creature, but we can use it to do let's cute creature, right? So that's the uvula. So pharyngeal wall, uvula, and now we have the ventricular fold, which are mucous membrane slightly above the vocal fold. If you know a thing or two about throat singing, oh, ha, this is ventricular fold. A vibration, but then we can, let's say, make it a little less clean, so we can go from we can create that vocal effect with it, and there we can put the pitch higher. Hey, so when I do this voice, it's not only the vocal folds who are producing a vocal effect, this is also ventricular folds who are creating a second layer of distortion on top of that. So that's another kind of vocal effect we can use. Another one which happen on the vocal fold is what we call ingressive sound. So ingressive sound is when you are producing a sound by inhaling and not by exhaling, right? And most of our life we spend time, producing sound this way, but now we can create sound with inhaling. For example, if you know about the clicker in The Last of Us, that I'm producing the click by pulling the air in. So we can produce click. We can, for example, use the larynx and go lower. Create this, and then we can go higher. And create other sound with that. Most people, when they start doing that, they start coughing, because coughing and dryness are usually what happened first when you start playing with vocal effect, because our relationship to vocal effect as a regular human being is not a positive one, right? When do we use vocal distortion? We use it when we're coughing, unfortunately when we're vomiting, when we're screaming, and when we're angry at someone, right? And when we're in pain. So the thing is, the way the brain perceives vocal distortion is quite negative. So this is why it takes a while just to deprogram the brain from its negative perception towards vocal effect. And the main two defense mechanisms that are usually being triggered are coughing, or that dry feeling that comes with a lot of air now being thrown out of your lungs and passing by the vocal tract. So this is why playing with all vocal effect, a lot of people think that when they start, they have to achieve projection. No, you have to be able to control one thing specifically, and you don't necessarily need to go loud at the beginning. You just play with the vocal effect and have fun with it, because you want to send that message to your brain that it's okay to do that. I'm not dying. I'm not coughing. I'm not, there's no threat to my life at the moment. I'm just having fun with something specific.
Right. Now, okay, so that is illuminating, that you're able to do, like, this is what this effect is, like, that you're able to do it so powerfully. So there's the layer of understanding the fundamentals, like almost if we were doing ballet,
Yeah.
right? If we were doing ballet, this is a tendu, this is a do, and we do this to develop that. But you get these fundamental moves. Now, there seems, in just watching you work, then there is another layer that starts bringing in the acting questions, and how are we as this is a really interesting thing, because it seems like this is where becoming part of the 1% can be very valuable to whatever storytelling we are adding to, right? Because if you just get a tiger scream, it's general, because you don't know what was going on for that tiger to be the gorilla sound, right? But when you have an actor that you can be able to calibrate these sounds. So where I'm getting to is, okay, so there's these fundamental techniques that we can start being aware of and exploring gently and slowly.
Very gently and very slowly.
Gently and slowly, but to understand that's where it comes from. Then what would you say is the next layer of developing a creature? Is it figuring out what their physicality is? Is it figuring out what their drive is? Like, what are they after? Like, how do you approach what's the next layer?
I would say that, and this is what I call vocal archetypes. I just gave a brief example with zombies, right? Nowadays, zombies have different vocal archetypes, meaning that if you want to voice a zombie, there are like 4 different ways to go at it. You can still do the moan, but they're less popular nowadays. The is actually the main one. You have aggressive sound. If you listen carefully to the sound of the horde in Days Gone, you have aggressive sound. And if you look at, bigger zombie, I just finished The Last of Us Season 2, and there's a big, infected, and boom, and he does, a big guttural sound like that. The thing is, most creatures have a specific sound that people want to hear, right? When they think about that creature. Like, even to this date, when I'm casting for an evil witch, most of what people have in mind can be traced back to The Witch and Wizard of Oz. Oh, I'm melting. And of course, early Disney movies, right? And this is true for a lot of different characters. Like if you imagine like King Kong or Godzilla, they come with a very specific set of sound, right? And it's rare that vocal art, like they evolve through time, but it's rare that, there's, except for the zombie, it's rare that there's a lot of different vocal archetype for different type of creatures. So listening to movies with creature and aliens and monster, playing video games with alien and creature, just understanding the audio references that people want to hear. Like if you think about an orc and you close your eyes and imagine an orc saying something, it's going to say something low, it's going to be guttural, and it's going to be in British or with a Cockney accent because of Lord of the Ring, right? So when I'm talking about vocal archetype, I'm talking about all the audio references that we have in our mind attached to something specific, right? And the more popular a game or movie becomes, the more the sound for that creature or that creature in there becomes the reference, and especially when you want to convince people, or I'm talking with clients, like being knowledgeable about vocal archetype and knowing, okay, that's the creature, that's the sound it should make, and this is why. Right? Sometimes we have to invent things, but most of the time we have to be knowledgeable about that specifically. And the thing is, you were mentioning like for human character backgrounds, what are the intention, what are creature are a little bit more simple than human. For example, if I was a human in a post-apocalyptic world and there's a zombie, apocalypse, maybe if my parent dies in front of me, or they were killed by zombies, and then I had to grow up without parents, maybe that will, influence the way that I'm going to play the character as a voice actor. But if that character becomes a zombie, like it's not going to be, the orphan zombie. It's going to be the zombie that wants to eat you, and it's going to be full on aggressive, right? And it's going to be aggressive or idle, or maybe he's going to be eating, right? Like I said, so there's, for certain type of character, there's less layers in terms of emotion.
More like lizard brain when you're voicing lizards, right?
Exactly.
We eat, we recoil, we attack.
But that's the thing. It's rare that we have a script. We have to convey emotion through action. So we have to breathe, we have to run, we have to be idle, we have to attack, we have to die, we have to, suffer, we have to jump. So most of it is conveyed through non-verbal, right? And creature voice acting is also the art of communicating emotion without words.
Right.
Because most of it is not scripted. Like sometimes we do have monsters and creature who talks, but most of the time, like so this is a different breed of acting. How do you convey emotion without using words? Like you can do that, but it has to remain simple, right? You cannot have all the complexities of the human language tied to that. Like you have to go to the point and convey what you need to convey for a specific action.
So as we're playing around, because I think sometimes like you'll get a script and it will have the points that we want to hit. Like it does this, it's hit, or we take a hit, or we give a hit, or something like that. And sometimes how to becoming specific with that is the game, right? Because you think while you're doing it, oh, I'm so in it, but then you listen back, like, no, it all sounds like could you give us a little a three-point exercise of variations of motion and emotion with increasing stakes or whatever. Like what's a good practice? Like try this, try that, try this, and then play.
Absolutely. The thing is, like I was saying, we rarely use a script. So most of it comes through vowel and consonant, right? You know, I've heard people say, well, you know, when you want to do good variation, you just go through the alphabet. You know, when you switch it here and there, and it's going to work. The reality is that specific action requires a specific set of vowel and consonant to actually be realistic. And the thing is, from creature voice acting, I take away from what I do as a human character. So I'm going to give you a quick example to answer your question. If I want to convey an attack with no words, but just like, you know, as a human character, you know, like I was mentioning, if we go through the alphabet, if we start with B and we go ba, B doesn't sound like really an attack, you know, dynamic. If you try D, da, D doesn't sound like really an attack dynamic. If we try F, fa, it still doesn't sound like an attack dynamic. But if we try R, ra, if we try K, ka, if we try N, na, if we try TS, ta, those consonants convey the attack dynamic better than the other one I did prior to that. So with that knowledge, if I want to apply that to creature voice acting and make sure that, you know, I have good variation, because the reality is, since we don't have a script, we need to produce between 10 and 20 variation for one single action. And that's what, you know, one of the challenges is how do you make all the variation different from one another, right? So let's say that if I take that, what I just did for human voice, and I translate that with a voice technique for an orc, well, then that would be right? So I'm basically just using what I would be using as a human character, but I just use a vocal effect on top of that. One of the things that I developed over the years, because again, this is, you know, vowels and consonant, I developed what I call a phonetic script. And a phonetic script is like a script, you know, but instead of having words, I have vowel and consonant, and I have a list of vowel and consonant that helps me to guide myself when I do variation for a video game recording session. And this comes by basically exploring, you know, trying like I just did, because believe me, like the first time I did, or the second time I did a recording session for a video game, I probably did try a B for an attack and went ba and D da. So the thing is, by trying which vowel and consonant can actually works for a specific action, and also to try and do it yourself, because that's the thing with video games. Sometimes you have to be realistic. Sometimes, like for example, for breathing sound, even for human, like I've been talking for a bit, I've been breathing for a while. You don't hear me breathe, right? But we need to hear you breathe in a video game. So this is where it becomes like not really realistic. But the rest of the action, like when you die, it needs to feel, especially by fire, it needs to be gruesome and panicky and all of that. If you die by poisonous gas, you have to choke for like 6-7 seconds and then do a death rattle at the end. So by looking at the way we would do this sound as a human, that can actually help us to find the way we would do it as a creature or a monster. Because I take a lot of that whole vowel and consonant and playing with that to convey specific action.
Yeah. No, you just gave us great example. Like those are so, like those are little like, we can play with those. Can you did on consonants, can you do an example of how you'd explore with vowel sounds and how you'd build with that?
For example, if we take pain, right? Pain is so common in video game. Like there's breathing, there's pain, there's dying, and there's attack. Those are the usual suspect, right? Like if I bump my small toe on the table right now, apart from swearing in French, which I won't, I would probably go with the vowel A. But instead of A, I'm gonna go ah. Even if there's no pain, naturally, the sound that is recorded in my body is ah, which is the vowel A, you know, in English, but I say it in French. And the funny thing is, you know, when I hear people recording video game, and especially onos and grunts, even English people, they don't go A, right? They go ah. So they suffer in French. So and probably in Polish. I've heard in Polish as well. This is what they have. So let's say you want to have good variation on the ah, but again, you cannot go ah like 20 times, right? So what I do, I take ah and then I'm adding a vowel, but very subtle at the end. So for example, ah, ah, ow, I, I. So then I just use at the beginning, but then I just switch the vowel. And then you can switch the first vowel. I'm going to start with and then go oh, and then I just produce 5 more variations. Then I can switch E for O. And then I just produce another set of variation. So at some point I had to find a system, very systematic system that I could use to actually be efficient in video game recording session, because again, 20 variation per action, 30 action, 600 sound in 4 hours. I mean, at some point you just become lost in a sea of sound. Like, okay, what did I do? And the thing is, because we don't have a script, it becomes a heavy mental process. Instead of being focused on the performance, we're also focused on generating the script.
Right. No, that's a really powerful thing to note. And that was so beautiful because you were doing something that was quite technical, going down this in front of that and this in front of that, and yet it sounded and felt very authentic.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that for me, my phonetic script act as a guide. Not, it's not like, okay, this is it still need to be to sound natural, right? So the thing is, for me, my advice when I give workshop about phonetic script is always start playing with vowel and consonant, see what feels right for you, and then start practicing those systematically until it becomes so integrated. Then after that, you can play with them, you can modulate them, because it's not true. Depending if you do a cutscene, it's not going to be, it might be longer than that, and then you need to adapt it, right? But when it's become part of how you work, it becomes systematic, and then you can apply it and modify it on command, right? So for me, that was one thing that was important to develop at some point, because this is like 99% of everything we do is vowel and consonant, right? Different action.
Right. And then it'd be different if you're a zombie, or if you're an orc, or if you're Cookie Monster, or if you're a cute little creature.
Well, then the voice technique comes and actually can, because again, some voice technique offer a lot of possibilities, but they also have limitation. So for some voice technique, I cannot do a hard consonant, right? For example, if I want to do an R on an inhale, R, like it sounds rah, rah. So it doesn't have that impact.
It's a different translation when you do it with different tools.
Absolutely. So you also have to be knowledgeable not only about what we just spoke about, but also about the possibilities, but the limitation of the voice technique. Because some voice technique, well, it's going to be problematic if you want to go through the phonetic script the way that you've written it, right? Without considering the vocal effect you are using to create a creature sound.
Yeah. Well, I know we have a limited amount of time. We've got some good questions. No, it's such a blessing to have you here. It's great. But let's open up to some
real quick before we do questions. Can we do the photo?
Yes. Well, we're here.
The photo first. We always forget about. I know, but I always forget about that whenever I give workshop.
Yeah. All right. So, Paige,
on camera if you can.
Yeah. Oh, and everybody, this is our director of operations, Sarah. This is not just some rando going like, hey, what about a picture? This is our director of operations. Yeah. All right. So many good people here today.
Oh, Derek. Oh, Bev. I know a few people in there. Hello, Derek. Hello, Bev.
Okay. 3, 2, 1. Slide 1. And then we're going to do slide 2 real quick. 3, 2, 1. Slide 2.
Sorry, that's my not so monstrous pause, but I always do monster face when
It's good. Well, let's start with some questions. Bard,
our first question is from Catherine. Catherine, are you still here?
Yeah, I was just kind of doing that in the chat, right?
Yeah,
that's
well,
exactly.
the chat questions become the questions.
Oh,
So-
yeah. After I asked that question, I just went and YouTube searched metal scream warm up, and I feel like I got a lot of resources.
Oh no! Don't go
No?
on YouTube.
Don't do it. Okay.
Don't go
Okay,
on
that's
YouTube.
important.
And I'm going to tell you why. The thing is, you know, when I was talking about the different kind of vocal fic, there's vocal anatomy and vocal science behind that. And there's very few of us who are actually not only, you know, performers, but also who have studied vocal health and vocal science. A lot of video that are on YouTube are actually coming from people who have, you know, I think good intention, but a lot of time anything about anatomy or anything about a progressive training, like it doesn't take in account the reality of voice actor. It is targeting people who just want to scream, right? The approach to work with a voice actor is a little bit different. Because like I said at the beginning, you already have a lot of things to do. You have to find specific moment where you want to practice and work on stamina. So if you use those video, like it, and for me, it's like what I call the one-size-fits-all approach. I hate the one-size-fits-all approach because this is not tailor-made to your strength and your weaknesses. A video will never give you feedback about if you're doing the sound the right way. This is where having an actual practitioner, but that has also knowledge in vocal anatomy and vocal science, can actually help there. Because if you're doing a sound and you're trying to replicate what someone else is doing, maybe there's just a little tweak to actually achieve that. Unfortunately, that video will not tell you about it, right? This is really something that most of the time you have to work one-on-one with the voice talent. Most probably you're all, I assume we're all working in voice acting. You probably heard that, things like push with your diaphragm, right? Raise your hand if you heard that at some point in your career. You have to push with your diaphragm. Yeah. The thing is, if you take the time to Google the role of the diaphragm, you know that whenever you're exhaling, the diaphragm is actually relaxing. So it is the abdominal muscle, intercostal muscle, the oblique, the muscle from the lower back, and sometimes muscle from the pelvic floor that actually are the one contracting. So how can you push from something that is relaxing? Right? So whenever I listen to a video on metal vocals on YouTube and it starts with, yeah, you have to push with your diaphragm, like I assume the rest of the content, maybe it's going to be interesting, but it's not going to be scientifically accurate. So you wanna be careful about exploring. Like if you add me on Instagram, I can actually send you a few channels. The only one that I would recommend, because there's a very handful of people that I deem responsible and knowledgeable to actually share that kind of knowledge. Sorry for the long answer.
That's good.
No, you saved me some time. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Could I ask one other question while I've got you?
Sure, real quick.
So regarding screaming, which, I mean, we've been discussing vocal distortion for characters, but for creating that screaming sound are you using your vocal folds or are you keeping them close? Okay, because I just was in a session with 𝗨𝗶𝗺 and he's got a different technique and I just wanted to kind of hear
it depends which one, right? But let's say, for example, when I do I do this, I'm going to take away the vocal effect and you will hear what the vocal folds are actually doing. So in a lot of vocal effect, regular vocal folds are just doing their regular job. They act as a foundation on which you are building the vocal effect, right? You use something else in the vocal tract to actually create the sound effect. So a lot of the voice technique are actually using vocal fold, but the thing is, vocal fold doesn't have the role of creating or be the source of distortion, right? You give that role to other things in your vocal tract. That being said, there's a few vocal effects like the one I was doing at the beginning with a tissue on the pharyngeal wall.
Yeah.
There's no vocal fold in there. If I use the epiglottis and I do There's no vocal fold in there. It's the sound from the epiglottis. So some vocal techniques require the implication of vocal folds. Sometimes vocal folds have the role of creating this or be the source of distortion, and sometimes they are not. Right. So it all depends on which technique, you want to train, you want to be trained on, and what type of requirement. For a human scream, most people use vocal fold distortion. Right? They don't really know how to access ventricular fold distortion because they haven't been trained on that. So they're using the vocal fold, and this is where it becomes a little bit more tricky, because the more you use the vocal folds as also the source of distortion, but also creating the pitch. Most of my vocal coach, the other extreme vocal coach people that I work with, one of the things that we saw in the last 10, 15 years that we've been doing this is that a lot of people using only vocal fold distortion were the one who had the most problem, because they're asking the vocal fold basically to do two jobs: be the source of the pitch and be the source of distortion. So this is why learning how to separate the elements and giving the role of creating the vocal effect to something else than the vocal fold.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Our next question is from Mark. Mark, I think you're still here. Are you able to ask it?
I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hello, Mark.
Okay, great. Hi. Well, thanks so much. You are amazing. And I'm just sitting here laughing and having a great time just watching you work. And it's just fantastic what you can do. I mean, you're a magician. You mentioned earlier that there was something 𝗍𝗁. It was in relation to...
Humanizer, I think.
Is that a humanizer? Okay.
Dehumanizer.
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 Okay.
We need a little bit more humanizers around, like humidifiers. We just need more humanizers, like in Capitol Hill or something. But keep on going. Political things. Go ahead, Mark.
So that relates to the friendly and happy-going Sébastien suddenly becoming dehuman, right? And that's so. Is it it almost sounded like an app or a program you could tune into, but it's just is it in your head or what?
No. It's a plugin that you can actually buy.
Plugin. Oh,
and it's a plugin. So whenever you buy it, then when you record it, you can either transform your recording afterwards using the plugin to modify what was recorded, or you can actually hear the result of the plugin in real time, meaning that whatever you record it, you will hear, the end result of what you are actually doing. And this has been like, again, if you listen to most of the villains in Hollywood blockbuster, they mostly have, and you hear a lower pitch, like, whoa, they talk like, like this, and it doesn't sound natural. This is mostly through the use of the humanizer. The thing I love about the humanizer compared to Animal Sound Library is that we have a performer, right, behind the sound. Even though we use something to modify the sound, there's still a human presence, and this is why I don't want to be critical of Animal Sound Library, but for me there's a limitation. Like, we don't know why the sound were made. We don't know the intent behind the sound they're creating. This is something an actor and a performer can actually do. So for me, using the humanizer is actually, not a bad thing at all, because at least there's a performer behind that. And it can help a lot of people creating creature and monster sound as well, right?
Oh, thank you, but you don't need no stinking dehumanizer. You can just do it, right?
Probably they based the humanizer on my, they secretly studied me during the night, and but thank you for a question, Mark.
Thank you very much.
It's awesome. It's awesome to see our human reaction to you making dehumanized sounds. Like, you made a sound, we all went, whoa, like that, like just visceral reaction.
Very quickly, when I go to video game conferences and I talk about how creature sounds are made, there's always a presentation or part where you can listen to the effect of dehumanizer. So there's a guy saying, I strike I am the darkness, and then they uses dehumanizer to do it. And then usually whenever I do the conference, I just do with my voice, I am the darkness, and people are like, and they kind of get it, know, that of course it's interesting using a plugin, but for me, like, there's no substitute to the actual real thing, because if you talk to any sort of sound designer, having an amazing source and not having to work on it post-production is always better for them. Right?
Yeah.
So the closer you can get to the actual source, usually the better it is. But yeah, no, and you know, sometimes we do use other things than voice. You know, we've been using PVC pipe sometime, cardboard pipe, a different kind of thing to kind of enhance the sound that we're creating. But my approach, and it's always been my approach, is always using the voice as the primary ingredient, you know.
That's cool. Excellent. Well, who's next, sir?
Next is Bard. Are you still here?
Hello.
Yeah, they are.
Hello.
Hi, I have a couple of questions. I have first, what are some resources, books, courses, or coaches you would recommend to further research vocal technique and care for creature voice acting?
Absolutely.
How about Sébastien Croteau at Munster?
No, the thing is, you're in luck. 2 weeks ago, I actually put up on my website a resource page.
Thanks.
In there's and I still need to add a few videos, specifically the video of my extreme vocal coach friend that I recommend. But I started to add, and of course, like most of the video that I have there, or can be found on the YouTube channel. But sometimes people don't know about the YouTube channel and they go to the website. So if you go on the website, I think the second to last thing is going to be resources, so you can go there. Because we already have a bunch of video about, for example, how to do a creature voice reel. I have a 1 hour free video, 45 minutes free video on vocal health with a voice therapist called Karen Esposito. She's from the UK. So, and she explains a lot of things about the importance of vocal health. So if you go in there, and I just shot 12 more video talking about how to build stamina, what are my best advices, for example, for a creature voice actor. This will be released in the upcoming weeks. But like I said, if you want other resources, like I did for Katrin, if you add me on social media and you send me a message, hey Sébastien, I was at VO Dojo, like, do you have any, you know, YouTube channel to recommend me and stuff like that, I'm gonna gladly send you the same information. But yeah, if you go on our channel in the resource place, you're gonna have a bunch of video. There's even more stuff that will be coming coming out in the upcoming weeks.
Nice.
Awesome.
So generous.
Excellent.
Thank you.
And then my second question is a bit more of a fun question. It's what's your favorite type of creature to play, or do you have a dream creature you aspire to play in the future?
I was lucky enough to be the voice of the xenomorph in Dead by Daylight. So the actual xenomorph, right, in the Alien. That was the first time they used a human as a base for this character. So, and you can imagine, Alien the xenomorph was on top of my list. The second one is actually the Predator. And I never had the chance to do, but there's not a lot of game with the Predator.
Yeah.
Right? That's the problem. Maybe we need to hide back, you know, the Predator. And with the new movies, maybe there's going to be, you know, maybe there's going to be a few games about it. But that would be, you know, one of my dream character, because I was, again, in Guardian of the Galaxy. I was lucky enough to do the Hulk. I had 2 lines, Hulk smash. That's it. That's all I had to say. But that was the Hulk, which was kind of cool. But I would say my favorite character, you know, above anyone, and I don't know why, but it's the zombies. I have a thing for zombies. I love zombies. I love, you know, maybe it's the fact they were human before turning into that thing. But I think there's something to that is speaking to our humanity through their lack of humanity.
I've done haunted house acting as a zombie multiple times, so I absolutely understand.
Yeah, so I have a thing for zombie, like. Yeah. But hopefully the Predator one day. I would love to.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have time for one more. There's one really good question that people have asked. This is Bev's question. Do you require a specific demo? And if so, how long would it be? And is there a story with it or just vocal sounds?
Wow, that is a question that will probably take 10 minutes. No, I'm joking, to answer. Real quick, we actually have a video called The Do's and Don't for a creature voice reel. Basically, for me, and it's like, let's say that I can pull off a British accent, right? I could probably have a 10-second on my voice reel or of a really good Cockney and British accent, but can I sustain that accent for 2 hours or 3 hours or 4 hours. So the thing is, never put something on a crucial voice reel that you cannot sustain for X amount of time and that you're really proficient at, right? Because it's like selling wins. You're selling something, but you cannot really deliver on that very thing. So for me, like any kind of vocal effect that you can sustain, that's the one that you can actually put there. Voice reel for creature are different than voice reel for people. A lot of people, like, you can hear there's a different voice every 10 seconds and they switch from, you know, different genre one to another. For me, like, I want to hear 30 seconds, but within that 30 seconds, I want to hear subtle sound and I want to hear projected sound. Because the reality of creature voice acting is that whatever voice technique you are using, you're going to be doing subtle sound with it and projected one, right? And not just a series of action. Do a scene. Like, imagine you're an orc around a campfire sharpening the blades, and then he sniffs something, and then he sees his next lunch, and then he run after the lunch, he kills it, and then he just do a victory scream. Like, I want to hear something happening, just as a random collection of sound put together, you know, because I want to hear that you can act with it. You know, I want to be able to close my eyes and to say, okay, this is what's happening. The zombie's running after someone, and he just caught the person. He's just eating his face, right? Maybe not the face. I don't know. Maybe I'm not going to hear about, you know, if it's the face or any other parts. But for me, that's one important thing. Like, I want to be able to listen to you controlling the vocal effect, being able to make it subtle and projected, but also I want to hear you act with it. Right? For me, those are the three things that are important. And of course, you cannot do like a 5 second and make sure that all I've just said, you know, are like, okay, this is done, this is done, this is done. So this is why for me it's a different creature for a creature voice reel. But there's a few more things on the YouTube video that I did. And the thing, like any kind of demo, don't rush into it. Right? Sometimes we feel in voiceover that a lot of people are like, hey, do a demo. Well, I just started. I'm like work on your stuff before doing a demo. There's a moment in your career where, okay, now I'm confident enough. Now I can do a demo. Like, if you're just starting in creature voice acting, don't rush doing a demo. Master your craft first and then do a demo. Like, for me, those are important steps to follow instead of just like, yeah, I'm gonna do a voice reel, and you're not able to sustain whatever you're putting on there. So that's not good. Thank you, Bev. Nice to see you.
Great
Bev.
questions. So Sébastien, I know we have to run. How do we keep in touch with you? What opportunities to work with you? Or I guess we'll find them on the website, but what would you like to share?
Well, first of all, go on our YouTube channel. There's a bunch of interesting video about what we do if you're interested to know more about vocal stunt performance, creature voice acting, vocal health, a lot of different topics. We have a lot of stuff there. I'm on social media. I still call it Twitter. I still use Twitter to do some announcement, but I'm not really active there. I'm mostly active on Instagram and on LinkedIn. I do publish a lot on LinkedIn. So if you're in the voiceover community and you want to be aware of our next workshop, because we do give a lot of workshop. We have 6 different workshops. 3-4 hour each. So some workshop are for beginners, some workshop are for people who are a little bit more advanced. So I usually, you know, tell people to take the beginner workshop first, of course, to have, you know, more of an overview of everything in creature or monster land, and then being knowledgeable about all that, you can decide for yourself, okay, this is something I'm really interested in. So we have a workshop services for voice talent on our website in the services section, so you can look at the list of workshop there. But yeah, mostly on social media, you can find me there. And if you want to know about the workshop, we have a thing on our website for that.
Fantastic. Well, I know you have to run to another meeting. If everyone can hang out for a second, we can talk about, we'll just wrap up.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. I was just thinking, like, wouldn't it be funny if Sébastien like turned into a bat and then All right, Simon, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
And so much fun. And yeah, look forward to all the collaborations. So.
Absolutely. And thank you everyone who were there from the Dojo and all the beautiful voice talent that I haven't had the chance to talk to everyone. I apologize, but thank you for taking the time to be here with me today. And again, thank you, Tish, for providing
You are
that opportunity to me to talk about what I love doing.
really can feel
Scaring
it.
people, but with a smile. Right?
It's good. It's good. All right, friend. Take care of yourself.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Everybody, thank you
Bye.
so much for being here. This Get to Know VO is something that we do on the third Wednesday of every month. Usually it's at 10 o'clock. We adapt to our guests' needs. So thank you for rolling with that. Next month is our Demo Listen Derby. It's an event that we do twice a year with our demo producers, Brittany Cox and Ryan Ricks from Next Level Voice Demos. But if you have a demo that you'd like to get some feedback on, if you are in the process of determining wherever you are in the journey of, if you have never made a demo or never thought of it, it's a great way to understand what's involved with it. If you're, are finding out if you're ready to do it, if you have one that you're seeing how it's holding up. We basically break down what makes a great demo, and use real life examples. So that's great. First Wednesday of every month, we have Ask the Sensei, which is a free Q&A. And next month is going to be my friend and colleague, William Salyers, who you might know as Rigby from the regular show, or Doc Ock on in the Spider-Man video games. He's brilliant and wonderful. So those are the free things. We are here to support you every step of the way from I don't know to working pro. So wherever you are, we'd love to talk with you about where you're at and where you'd like to be. And if there's anything that we can help with, we have one more You Should Do voiceover, our foundational class happening in November. And we also do fight clubs 3 times a month, our working pro workouts. So always something good going on at the dojo. So glad you're here. Anything that I missed, Sarah? Okay. Yeah. If you want to talk with one of our path guides, you can sign up for what we call a voiceover once over, and we can get y'all started. Either Anderson, talk with Anderson or Melina. And yeah, so great to see so many new faces, so many returning faces. This is a resource for you to have and get refreshed and inspired and move forward. So thank you all for being here, and we'll look forward to seeing you all soon. Thanks, Alex. Thanks, Sarah. Great stuff. Take care, everybody.